All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Christina with NAMI Valley of the Sun chapter. We provide free support groups and educational programs to anyone in Maricopa County and part of Pinal. Of course, we partner with all of our affiliates, so if anyone's in need of support and resources, please do let us know. And Kathy, my partner in crime, Kathy, will you share a statement about the coalition?
Yes, my name is Katey Bescher. I chair the Arizona Parent Family Coalition, and our main objective is to ensure the voice, the peer, and the family member at every level of the decision making. So nothing about us without us.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. So it's with pleasure that we bring Katey McPherson here with you all tonight. It's sort of ironic. Katey and I were talking about doing this during May, being that May is Mental Health Month. And it turns out it's the eve before my kids' last day of school. So I feel like social media, while my kids are not there yet, they see it on TV. They're pretty close. I feel like it's a really great time for us to talk about it. So Katey, some of you know Katey. She from TEDx stages to national news platform. She's emerged as a trusted voice in youth digital wellness and mental health advocacy. She's been on ABC, Fox, NBC, KTR News. She's also spoken with Arizona's Teen Mental Health Committee at the Arizona Legislature. She really is an expert in many critical areas that impact our youth. So with that being said, and not only she's also a great human being and an expert in many of these areas, but a dear friend of NAMI and the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition. So Katey, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, I'm working on getting my slides up, but I'm just going to jump in. So typically when I do these presentations, I talk about things that intersect with social media, gaming platforms, etc. So I'm going to run through tonight 5 protective factors that sort of are the foundation, I believe, of what's missing. A lot of the headlines out there are about things like, Instagram's the worst app for body image for females. This video game is the reason kids are so violent. There's all sorts of different myths out there. And so I just encourage you as you are out and about in the world talking to people and looking at articles and watching documentaries that you look at the source, because there are certainly a lot of sources out there that aren't as reliable as others. And I really think it's important to understand sort of the underpinning of what's going on in general, both with adults and with students, as it relates to device use by adults. So when I get my slides up and when I send them to you, you will be able to see the title slide is It Starts With Us, Parenting in a Tech World. So before our students and our kids can really get to know these platforms and these devices, we have to do that for ourselves. Because over the last 25 years, I've really seen adults just hand over what I call the Ferrari with no driver's ed. And I've been watching kids, to include my own, I have 4 teenage daughters, that are making digital mistakes, that are being exposed to explicit content, that are meeting people that they don't know, that are being cyberbullied. Literally about 10 minutes ago, one of my good friends called and she said, I just sent you some screenshots and I need your help. And they were really nasty screenshots between a few teenagers online about her daughter posted on Instagram. And here her daughter is graduating tomorrow as an 18-year-old senior. And she's trying to figure out how to defend herself in front of, I'm literally going to say like 5,000 people are following this one platform. So we have to be really clear about, what are we handing over? How well do we know that? And what do our kids have access to? So the first protective factor, and it looks like I'm going to join as myself on my computer, hopefully, and be able to share these slides with you too. So I probably need. Recording in progress. Oh no, I'm going to echo. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to go mute over here. And then can you make me co-host? Yay for slides. Why am I echoing this? This one? Okay. Is that for the- Echo. It's very strange. Oh my gosh.
I think
Okay,
because
I'm
you're
leaving
still on your
now.
other device, Katie.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Okay. Are we good now? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
I'm going to hit play. Okay, this will make so much more sense now. I'm so sorry. So I do talk about some heavy duty topics. Title slide. I'm going to talk about bark in a minute. I'll go back to that, but I really want to talk about like what is going on with our kids. So I hear a lot about like devices and what they're doing to our kids, but we're not talking about the other stressors that are going on. So, academic pressure. If you have a kindergartner, they're doing third grade work. If you have a third grader, they're doing sixth grade work. If your kid isn't a scholar, it's really hard. I have several that are and several that struggle. It's a tricky balance. I started seeing schools change about 25 years ago when the College Board came down and said everybody has to take the ACT and the SAT. And that's when I started seeing my students start taking more AP classes, taking 0 hour, and really just grinding and really just being under so much pressure. Another thing that changed was removal of rough and tumble play. If you go to any of our playgrounds right now, you'll hear adults saying things like, don't run too fast. Why are you climbing on that? Don't push and shove. Don't touch each other. Like the old school rough and tumble play from the 80s and 90s is not allowed because it's deemed unsafe. So, when specifically for young boys, when they are not allowed to push and shove, the natural aggression and testosterone that they have in their body does not get released. And so it shows up in the classroom. So if you have teacher friends that are thinking about leaving the profession or frustrated, it is most likely because there is so much going on in the classroom that is not being released during free play. And then going home, a lot of these kids are not moving their bodies and they're on devices as well. Our foods, we could go on for days about what's going on with that. But a note about that is new puberty is about 8.5, 9 years old. So we're starting to see bodies change in like third, fourth grade, but brains are still developing well into their mid 20s for our girls and 26 to 32 for our boys. So when you are working at a school like I did with middle and high school students, you have 14-year-old boys that are 6'1" that look like they should know better, but they're only like halfway through their brain development. So you're going to see impulsivity, irritability, jerkiness, defiance, pushing limits. They're supposed to be doing some of those things. I'm not saying it's appropriate, but it's developmentally normal for kids that age specifically to push limits. And so when bodies look taller and stronger faster, we seem to think that they're more grown up than they are. But we have to really rely on brain science, as you all know, to really look at the data. Everything is bullying. So starting in the year 2000, I was trained as an administrator that there's a victim and there's a bully. And when we started labeling kids bullies and kids victims, instead of like, hey, these two eighth graders are having a conflict and they need to work it out with our help, we started labeling kids and putting kids in special cubbies and sort of saying like, when you figure it out, you can talk to us. Again, going back to that brain science, not everything is bullying. And so we've got to have conversations with parents about what bullying is and is not, what conflict is, but most importantly, do kids know how to resolve it themselves? And right now, the answer is no, because so many parents and so many educators are like swooping in and intervening and saying like, you over there, you over there. And the children themselves are not having conversations and building vocabulary in how to resolve their own conflict. So we have like these rock star academic kids that have very low coping skills and very low maturity and very low social competence. So I'll talk a little bit about how to develop that because I think it is a lifelong, I know it is a lifelong skill. We all know that unfortunately our kids are training for active shooter drills at school. Never in my lifetime as an educator did I think that I would be teaching children how to save themselves from a gunman, and specifically a gunman that has access to them during the school day. So I think it's just really important to understand it's not just about these devices. There are other stressors that are pushing kids to use devices to numb out, to escape from this stress, and that the quote addiction to these devices is not necessarily the kid's fault. It starts with adults. It starts with access to, we know schools are handing out devices as well. So my goal for any parent education, any education and awareness at all is to really get clear about screen time and really get clear about what kids are consuming. Not all screen time is terrible. I put it in two buckets: digital vegetables, digital candy. There are kids doing amazing things with technology. It's a tool. They're about 25,000 miles ahead of us. We have to have positive messaging around screen time instead of just nagging them and saying, get off your device and you're burning your brain out and give me that, when we are on our devices 24/7 as well. So there's a couple of different kinds of parents in the digital age. There's people that are absolutely restricting everything, which is fine. People that are enabling everything, which is not fine. And the parent that I want you to be is a mentor parent. So learning yourself what you've given access to, learning Snapchat backwards and forwards, learning TikTok, Instagram, all the things backwards and forwards. So if you're going to give it as the digital candy, that you know how to monitor and supervise it. I saw today that Rachel Mitchell held a press conference about several cases where young children in the Valley have been lured and groomed and preyed upon using Snapchat and Discord. And so I'll go through a couple of the platforms, but really I want kids to know how to manage this on their own by the time they're 18, which means we have to do it with them. We can no longer say like, oh, I didn't have Snapchat. I don't really understand TikTok. I didn't grow up with a phone. Like, we have all of the science and all of the research that says this is not good for us, and it's definitely not good for our kids. Some resources I'm going to flip through quickly. How to Raise a Boy, Self-Driven Child. Cannot say enough great things about these books. I have 4 daughters. I have 5 sisters. I have no brothers. I have no sons. But 95% of my school day was spent with boys in my office. And so I got to know them very well, and I love them very much. Another great book on boys, Saving Our Sons, and another great resource that I use all the time is the book Untangled. I operate on the rule of 5. 5 years before your child is going to face something, we're having conversations about it, whether it's drugs and alcohol, sexual consent, predation, pornography, access to explicit content, talking to strangers. I spoke in New York City a couple of days ago, and a man raised his hand and said, like, so you want me to talk to my 7-year-old about pornography? I said, yes, because the average exposure to pornography is 8 years old. And that is not because your 8-year-old is Googling porn. That is because he's playing Fortnite or Roblox or Minecraft, and someone is pretending to be 8 and is in the chat dropping a hyperlink to pornography, and he's going to click on that because it's colorful, and then there you go. You can do all of the things. You can lock down your house. You can have Bark app. You can have a great router. Some joker at school is going to show your kid porn, whether it's on the soccer field, in the locker room, on the bus, like someone is going to expose your children to this. And so we have to get ahead of it. Another great resource, I love middle school kids. I think they're wildly misunderstood. This is a great resource called Middle School Matters. And then another book called Thrivers. So especially in the East Valley, we've seen an uptick in youth suicide. And one of the things over the last 10 years that we've been noticing is those suicides, not always, but often, are happening in very well-resourced homes with very affluent children, with very high-achieving children. Certainly, suicide does not discriminate. It happens everywhere. It's happening statewide and nationwide. But when we look at some of these small contagions that we've had, we started to see one pop up in Queen Creek between 2016 and 2018. Then we saw another one at Corona del Sol High School in Tempe from 2018 to 2020. In Chandler Unified, we had 3 students in a 10-day span in 2022 who were all sophomores died by suicide at 3 separate high schools. It's happening everywhere, right? So one thing that has happened that may surprise some people is that high achieving students have now been labeled an at-risk community. We used to just talk about that in the Title I community. We now have another sort of group that we're watching. And so this book really talks about super awesome that your kid has a 4.0, but here are some ingredients of why these kids in particular are struggling and what we can do about it. And that book is called Thrivers by Dr. Michelle Borba. Another resource I want to point out is the documentary Childhood 2.0. I can't recommend this documentary enough. It's about an hour and a half long. It's on YouTube. It's free. Just put in Childhood 2.0. Bark made it with several other producers. And what I love about it is there are children in the movie, ages 8 to 18, talking about this is hard. It's hard having a device. If my parents knew what was on my device, they'd never let me have it. Yep, this is happening at my school. Yep, kids that come over for my sleepovers are watching porn. Like, it's a very realistic documentary. So I'd like to try to play the trailer for you. And I think I just need to share my sound so that you can hear it. Share computer sound. All right, let's see. Let me know if you can hear it with this.
A long time ago, families were in communities. They were local, they were small.
I was born in the very depths of the Great Depression. I was put to work carrying wood, carrying water. I knew how to shell peas, I knew how to break beans. We still didn't have electricity.
I have 2 Instagram accounts.
I use Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok.
TikTok and Fortnite.
I can just scroll for hours on end.
11 hours a day.
It's been 8, 9.
Maybe like 12.
It's actually been a way that we can keep track of them out there in the real world where things really are scary.
The lives of kids were sort of changing slowly for a while, and then all of a sudden, most kids were able to get on social media, and that's when everything skyrocketed.
The rates at which they're experiencing problems continues to increase.
We also know that the teen suicide rate increased 56%.
Last year alone, we received over 18 million reports of international and domestic online child sexual abuse.
We have traded a false sense of safety and security for actually putting our kids in riskier situations.
I call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So it starts with techniques like pull to refresh.
Pretty much every guy has like an addiction to it, but no one talks about it.
But it's just faster now, and it's younger.
Well, yeah, like nudes of girls go around the school all the time.
At the beginning of the year, there were multiple suicides before school even started.
There were men that wanted to talk to children at all hours of the day and night.
Be shot.
On Snapchat, one thought it'd be a funny idea to talk the other one into committing suicide, and she did it. She's dead.
After about 6 weeks, we were able to crack his phone.
Kids right now are going to experience the worst of what we're going through.
I'm a little nervous.
This is the first time.
Do you think your parents know that this happens?
No.
My kid won't do that. My kid would never. My kid's school isn't like that. You're wrong.
Because what they see, they feel neurologically compelled to do.
Right now, we're effectively living in an experiment. How is this going to affect us? We'll find out.
So the experiment's been going on for 20 plus years, and we're failing miserably. So I think we have, as I said, enough data to know this is not great. So I recommend this movie for all caregivers, superintendents, governing board members, grandparents, anybody that loves children has to watch this movie. Anybody that's making policy around children has to watch this movie. Most of our superintendents and governing board members are between 50 and 80 years old, and they are completely out of touch with this. And they need to be very current and very relevant to understand the students that they serve. So we do screenings of this movie in movie theaters with student panels. We do screenings with cybercrimes detectives, social workers, people like yourselves. So I'd love to host wherever. We do them virtually, we do them in person. It's just a great way to get all of the adults in the room on the same page and understand that like this is really difficult for our kids. And there's a lot that we don't understand because we didn't grow up with it. One of the things that I talk to kids a lot about is their digital footprint. So most moms, because we love our kids so much, and we love to post about them. So prior to age 2, we've taken about 2,000 photos of our kids. And so I get a lot of phone calls from moms of 12-year-old kids saying, why is she addicted to her phone? I just got her own phone, and all she's doing is taking pictures of herself. And I ask, what are your digital habits like? How often are you taking photos of your family when she's, somewhere? Are you video recording it? Like, a lot of our behavior says to our children that everywhere we go, we need to document too. And this life is about documentation, posting, checking in, and telling everybody where we are. So when a 12-year-old girl gets her own phone, she's absolutely going to play monkey see, monkey do, because the takeaway message for this generation is life is to be documented, not to be lived. And I don't think there are a ton of dads out there doing it. It does fall on us as moms, and myself included in that. And so being a little more intentional about, sure, we can take a bunch of photos, but being more intentional about when we are at Disneyland, we're not going to focus on getting the perfect family photo. We're going to actually be here and enjoy the rides and the people here, because we spent $6,000 to be here together instead of trying to make a perfect photo that we know is of a family that is very imperfect, because we all are. And so, when I talk about this, I get a lot of head nods and moms with tears in their eyes, because they just don't realize that they too got swallowed up by this industry. And so being more intentional about our own digital footprint. And then I work with students specifically in 6th through 12th grade on, what do you want the world to know about you? If you're going to be on TikTok, if you're going to be on Instagram, if you want to get a job, if you want to go to college, your TikTok would put you in the no pile. Your Instagram would disqualify you from college. Like, the stuff you have on there of you like barely dressed, holding a red cup, is not going to get you into the college of your choice. So let's talk about using LinkedIn and making a shiny, responsible digital footprint in like 8th through 10th grade. And then mid-junior year, we're going to turn it public, so that if anybody Googles your name, there's a very shiny digital footprint of all of the amazing things that you've done and that you are is there. You can use photos and videos on LinkedIn. You can post things. Like, it's a very much more responsible platform than any of the others. I've helped ballerinas, I've helped baseball players, I've helped golfers, I've helped musicians, I've helped chess players, I've helped academics. Colleges are not just looking for, A and B students. They're looking for kind, compassionate, global citizens that give back to their communities. And so there's great things that you can do with social media to do that. Digital mistakes. So I have been helping a nationally recruited baseball pitcher from Scottsdale after he and his friends jumped on each other in the locker room and started gyrating on a Snapchat video. And that Snapchat video somehow was sent to his coach, to the superintendent, and to the college that offered him a scholarship. And the college called and said, due to this video, we're going to have to uninvite you from coming. And the superintendent said, you will not be walking at graduation because of what you did in the locker room. This was a state championship game. You're talking about 16 to 18-year-old boys, about 20 of them in what we call a dog pile, right? They're just all on top of each other, fully clothed in their uniforms in the locker room. And he decided to try to be funny along with several other children. And for some reason, he was the only one that got called out. And so these types of digital mistakes happen to the best of kids. My own children have made digital mistakes. And so we've got to be talking to our kids about not only the digital footprint, but like, what do you see in this photo? You see a bunch of girls flipping somebody off. Well, this is the #1 softball team in America. And they went to their tournament and they got sent home for this. And then it landed on the front page of a national USA Today newspaper. So when you Google these girls' names, this is what comes up. This is part of their permanent digital footprint. It is not enough to say to kids, be kind online. Adults are terrible online. These are children. They have half-developed brains. They're not going to be kind online. We've got to have constant conversations, ongoing, pervasive reminders, showing them photos like this. Like, hey, do you see stuff like this? Oh, yeah, Mom. Show me what you see, and have conversations that are ongoing. I often get the question, when should I get my kid a phone? So thankfully, we have a bunch of baby dumb phones out there now that just call and text. We have baby dumb watches. They only call and text. They show your kid's location. You can give them the opportunity to communicate with you without giving them untethered access to the internet. So this photo is from a few of the girls that were unfortunately part of the Columbine shooting. And this is when it happened. As soon as this event happened, we saw a huge spike in parents running out and buying phones for their third graders, for their first graders, for their sixth graders, saying, you know, if something happens to you at school, I want you to be able to call me. We have to get really clear about safety and what phones actually do. I can name at least 6 school shootings where students had phones, where they called for help, and the time that it took for them calling for help cost them their lives because they weren't paying attention to what they were supposed to be doing, or they weren't running for their life. So phones don't save lives. They seem like they do. They're a tool. But when you are in a crisis, and you all know this, your brain freezes and your gross motor skills go out the window. So to think that a phone is going to save a life is a stretch. We also know that law enforcement does not want our children on phones during an active shooting or an active drill. We also know that what we're really saying to kids when we say, I'm buying you this so that you can call me in case of emergency, we're really saying, I don't know if you're ready to problem solve. I don't know if you're capable or competent to get out of a crisis situation on your own. And I think we sell our kids short. Our kids are really smart and they're trained at school, run, hide, fight. They're trained what to do if they can't get out of a situation. And the time that it takes for them to get their phone out of their backpack and get on the phone and use mom and dad as a lifeline are life-saving minutes. We saw this in Uvalde with the 9 and 10-year-olds calling the police. And the police were literally sitting outside the door, and the phones did not work for them. And so we have to get super clear about, what does safety mean? Why am I giving this phone? Phones are tiny computers. And with a tiny computer, you can give access to the internet or you can turn it off. So you can take an old iPhone and make it really dumb. You can turn everything off but calling and texting, which is what these baby dumb phones do. So there are 4 companies out there that have baby dumb phones and watches. Bark, Trumi, Pinwheel, and Gab. All of them offer like a training wheel phone that if you want to give your child a phone, it is a much safer product. All of them are Androids because Androids are the safest phones out there. iPhones, believe it or not, and I love my Apple products, are the most dangerous devices we give our kids because the settings and the parental controls are not as great as Apple tells us they are. So pivoting just a little bit to social competence, which ties into the use of phones. So a lot of the conflict that we see in schools has to do with the fact that, again, our kids don't know how to tell someone to stop bothering them, because what we've told them during the anti-bullying movement of 1999 to 2001 is like, schools aren't safe, and then 9/11 happened and the world's not safe. And so if you have a problem, if someone kicks you under the table, if someone shoves you in the locker room, go get a teacher, go get a principal, go get an adult. And so for 22 years, I've been watching kids go to adults who don't have all the information making decisions about what happens next. And so, what I'd love kids to know is the word dignity. We don't really talk about this much in schools. Where I hear this word the most is in church. But all students have dignity, all people have dignity. And when you think about what bullying is and is not, is one person trying to silence the dignity of another, one person trying to silence the voice of another. That is really the crux of bullying. And so when kids know I have dignity and it's mine to keep, and they know how to advocate for themselves, they thrive. When kids run to adults and adults are like, okay, you're the bully, you're the victim, and the two students whose conflict it is don't talk to each other, social competence and dignity are not always upheld because the adult is just trying to be efficient and get those two kids out of their office or out of their classroom or back to class. So I do a lot of trainings in schools around dignity and respect. One of the reasons that our kids are not respecting us as much is because we're not upholding their dignity. We're doing a lot of the talking. They are not hearing us listen to student A and student B and really understand what's going on. And this goes for siblings too, right? This goes for if you have two kids that are arguing with each other and your constant feedback is like, well, you're older, you should know better. You are denying the dignity of your youngest child. Both kids have dignity. Both kids have a voice in your household, and both kids deserve to be heard. The only way that they can continue to respect each other and get over the hump of that conflict is if they have time and space, and that they, even if they're in trouble with you, even if they're grounded, they feel like, wow, my mom and dad really listened to what I had to say and listened to what my sister had to say. And they didn't call me names and they didn't shame me and they didn't humiliate me. A lot of times in our schools, I see this with coaches, I see this with teachers, I see it with administrators, where there's some shaming and humiliation that goes on. And so kids are like looking at us like, you didn't uphold my dignity. I cannot respect you. And it is not that there's something wrong with this generation, it's that they're so smart that they're like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be the people upholding my dignity, and you just took it away in front of the entire class. So I do a lot of training around that. In those moments that students have conflict, I think it's really important for parents to understand, like, where is your kid in the spectrum of a public health model approach to wellness? Are they in the lane of well-being? Are they having a little bit of distress? Are they tracking towards crisis? What are the nonverbal and verbal signs that you have that showcase where your kid is on the spectrum? And this is a daily thing. I want kids to have an emotional blueprint. I want kids to know, okay, if someone's mean to me, these are the 3 things I can do. I can go for a long walk. I can journal. I can watercolor. I can watch a mindless movie. I can go for a run. I can go for a drive. Like, what this generation is missing is the stop, drop, and roll of how to get out of emotional pain. How do I push through typical things that happen to me and come out on the other side? Most kids go from well-being to a little bit of good stress and back to well-being. What I've seen too much of in America is this persistent distress where they're sitting in the lane of distress for more than 2 weeks and then tracking. Some of them, unfortunately, are tracking towards crisis through self-harm and sometimes suicidal ideation. And so we really want more parents to be aware of, like, what is your kid's emotional blueprint? We teach them in kindergarten. You see smoke or fire, stop, drop, and roll. If your tiny heart is on fire and your brain's on fire, how do you stop, drop, and roll out of that emotional pain? I think that is a lifelong skill that, again, going back to the playground, going back to rough and tumble play, a lot of the yucky stuff that kids endure during the school day can be resolved through play. It can be resolved through going out on the playground and, just getting the yuck out. When those opportunities aren't there, all of that aggression, all of that sadness, all of that loneliness, frustration sits on their tiny hearts. And so that's what we've seen over the last few years is just this uptick in mental health issues. And I'll go back just one slide. So I hear from a lot of people, like, what is wrong with this generation? I feel like they're so weak. They're having so many mental health issues. Way prior to COVID, as you all know, we were in a youth mental health crisis. And so these are stats from the 2010 and 18 American College Health Association survey of college sophomores from across the country saying, yep, I'm having a little bit of anxiety. We have done a wonderful job, and NAMI is a huge part of that, in destigmatizing mental health. And so when you destigmatize mental health issues, more kids and more adults feel comfortable coming forward. So the uptick in this 140% increase, some of that has to do with stressors in the environment, but some of it also has to do with we've made help seeking cool. And so more kids are coming forward saying, yeah, I need help. The unfortunate issue in our schools specifically is that we don't have this cohort of social workers and clinical psychs and behavioral health therapists in our schools to triage as many kids are coming forward, which we have to be really careful about, because if we are telling kids, come to us, come to us, come to us. And then when they come to us, we're like, so sorry, we only have one social worker and we're not working with nonprofit agencies and sort of referring out and triaging, then we're not being great, trusted adults. We can't say to them, come to us, and then sort of push them away, or come to us and then say, oh, it's not as bad as you think it is. And so a lot of what I focus on with parents specifically is building that emotional blueprint and really attacking things as they happen in real time and not allowing it to fester. We all know that is very difficult to get an appointment with a clinician right now. And so if your child is going through something, we need to jump on it as soon as possible, work with the school. And for some of this stuff, it is beyond the school's reach, right? A school guidance counselor is an academic advisor. She or he is not a clinician. They may have been trained in QPR or ASSIST or Safe Talk, maybe, but they're very leery of talking about suicide with a student. And so we've got to be partnering with people like NAMI and Teen Lifeline and Not My Kid and Kid in a Corner and all of the wonderful organizations that we have around town. One of my biggest wishes is that parents would not allow devices behind closed doors. Nothing great happens with a tiny brain behind closed doors. And one of the things that happens is they lose sleep. And so you all know that sleep is so important for brains, and it's so important for mood regulation, that often when students go to see someone, a pediatrician, a clinician, they'll say to them, how's your sleep? And a lot of kids have devices next to them and they are scrolling all night. They're playing video games. They're getting into conflict. They're talking to strangers. Their sleep is deeply impacted. And so when I spoke to a group of fourth graders the other day, about a third of them raised their hand and said, I do have a phone next to my bed on a nightstand. One girl said, I'm going to be real honest, it's actually like in my pillow. Like I sleep with it under my head. So I encourage all students to move devices out of the bedroom. That includes video games, Chromebooks from school, iPads, switches, anything you have that could possibly tempt you to move those out of the bedroom. Another thing that I talk a lot about is bullying. So I want to go over that just briefly. As I said, about 95% of my school day was spent with students in my office about typical conflict. And so this platform is from Rosalind Wiseman, and her sort of framework is creating a culture of dignity. So in the column of bonding, teasing, and annoying, you have really typical behavior where kids are giving each other a hard time and sometimes pushing limits. In that last column of malicious harassment and intimidation, that is really the litmus test in schools for like, what is bullying? So the person I was helping tonight, the messages on Instagram were about her personhood. They were about her weight. They were about how she shows up in the world. They were about her eyes and what he thinks her eyes look like. They were awful things. It was malicious. It was harassing. It was intimidating. It would fit the litmus test of cyberbullying. And so I think parents need to get really clear on someone is going to push your kid off a swing. Someone is going to kick your kid. Someone is going to say, you cannot sit here at the lunch table. Someone is not going to invite your child to a birthday party. Someone is definitely going to push your kid in the locker room. These are typical things that are mean, annoying, and rude, but they don't always rise to the level of bullying, harassment, and intimidation. And so if we continue to sort of call the school, call the teacher, call the mom, be like, your kid was bullying my kid, and we don't allow the children to resolve their own conflict, which is not always bullying, we will continue to see the same thing where we have these really awesome kids exiting our schools who are lovely, but they can't tie their shoe. They can't solve a problem. They have very low coping and resiliency, and they're kind of immature. And so we have to allow conflict to happen. We have to have trusted adults that are trained in how to help students through that. And in our homes, we have to allow conflict to happen. Our homes are the best place for our kids to bicker back and forth and learn one-liners and then take those to school and know how to go through big groups of people advocating for yourself and advocating for others. That is a socially competent kid. And so adults sort of have to get out of the way a little bit. That doesn't mean let them have a free-for-all. It means you're having a conflict, you're student A, you're student B. I'm going to let you talk about it, and I'm going to stand here and listen. And if I need to interrupt, I will, but this is your deal. And so I'm going to be here, and if it's egregious, we'll talk about consequences. Most of the time, the kids are much better problem solvers than we are. We don't have all of the information, the details, the history. You know, these kids have been together K through 8. We don't have all of that. And so I think it's really important that kids feel like they have a voice at school. They have a voice in your car. They have a voice at the kitchen table. They know that dignity is theirs to keep, and they know how to fight like hell for it. Right now, I'm not seeing a lot of schools practice that. And I'm not seeing that parents really just even really know or can define what dignity is. And I think it's a lifelong skill. Lastly, I talked a little bit about digital vegetables, digital candy. So the red line that I have to this girl's neck outlines the brain stem. And this is where brains go crazy. So if I am the maker of Fortnite, or I am the maker of Minecraft, Roblox, any of this stuff, I want to keep a kid on the platform as long as possible, which means I need to take his brain and shove it deep into the brainstem where it is very primal. It's fight, flight, freeze. If I were to put a heart rate monitor on a child playing a video game or an adult, I would see high blood pressure, I would see heart rate up, and I would see a brain full of cortisol and dopamine. And so when kids get off a video game, you'll see sort of a crash. And my strategy around that is moving their body and drinking water. Water will immediately dissipate all of that cortisol and bring that brain back to a good baseline. The industry does not want you to know what's going on these video games. That's why they have things like private chats. They have Discord, which is an app where gamers can chat back and forth and parents rarely look, if ever. And the headset. The headset is purposeful because they don't want you to know what is going on. If your child is playing a video game and he's in a chat or she's in a chat, the chat is typically full of profanity at the upper grade levels, hate speech, pornography, cyberbullying. I mean, it's fraught with really yucky stuff. At the younger ages, it starts to get that way around 4th or 5th grade. And so I would encourage you, if you have a gamer, to sit down, play the game, get to know the game, put the headset on, know who they're playing with, When we talk to predators who have been convicted of child sex crimes and we ask them, who and how did you choose your victim? They always say somebody who had no parental supervision, low monitoring, and low self-esteem. That's how they choose kids. And let's be honest, we're really tired. We are busy people. It is an amazing feeling when your kid is on a device for 30 minutes and you can just like eat your food, right? So I get it, but there's just so much out there. And it's not necessarily your child that I worry about, it's the access and exposure that we have given them to like 4 billion strangers. And most parents are like, my kid's a good kid. That would never happen to my kid. All of our kids are good kids, right? It can happen to our kids. It happens to our kids and we don't even know it, right? So we just have to be more intentional about our monitoring and supervision. Um, I always show, at the end of my presentations, people ask, like, when should I give social media? When should I give a phone? What's the right age? I can't tell you the right age. What I can tell you is none of these platforms care about our children. Any platform, which includes TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Discord, the whole spectrum of them. Any platform that allows nudity, hate speech, fentanyl, cyberbullying, predation, fake nudes, the whole thing does not care about children. None of them. I don't care, Instagram rolled out like new teen accounts. You're still allowing nudity. You're still allowing hate speech. You don't care about children. You can have all the teen accounts you want until you crack down on the stuff that really counts. It just doesn't matter. And so I show these things that I have in front of you that are anonymous hate pages because this is what's happening in 7th and 8th grade, where kids are just making pages about each other. The thing I told you about tonight, she is 18 years old. She's a senior. She's walking graduation tomorrow, and she has no idea how to defend herself in front of 5,000 people. It's impossible to comment back and defend yourself because there are always 5 to 10 other accounts that are what we call burner accounts that kids are just making and saying terrible things. So this picture in front of you is an anonymous hate page that was made about my neighbor Hayden. She was in 8th grade at the time. And she came to her parents and she was like, this girl likes the boy that I like. And look what she did. She made this page. And underneath, there were like 200 comments for her and against her. And then on Monday, the girl came to school and got everybody together on the tennis court and started talking about her in person. And so she was texting her mom, like, she's telling all of them, like, what do I do? So she's getting crushed from both sides, right? This is not a school issue. If the principal looks into this one, he's got to look into the 17 others that happened Saturday night too. There's just no way that police or schools can do this. This is not a school issue. And so you have to know what you're giving. You have to really train your kids how to self-advocate. We can certainly block this page, delete this person, but Instagram is not going to take this page down. There's no phone number. If you've ever had an issue, you can't call Facebook. You can't call Instagram. Nobody works there. There's no humans that are like on a customer service line. They don't exist. So reporting the page, blocking the page. And on that note, lastly, our area, Phoenix in general, but East Valley where I live, I probably get 3 to 5 calls per month about sextortion. So if you haven't heard about sextortion, it's where typically a person from West Africa takes photos of children at our local schools and pretends to be that child. So they snag a picture of a really pretty girl at Basha High School and they make an account and they pretend to be her and they start talking to a boy that's somewhere between 11 and 18. And they start giving him compliments and saying how great he looks and all the things. And then they start exchanging photos. So she may send a picture of her breasts and then he sends a picture of his genitalia and they're going back and forth. And so a boy at Basha High School, who's now 19, this happened last spring, he said, Miss Katey, I want to show you what happened to me. And I want you to share this with every person you speak with, because this is what happened to me. And so you can see that as soon as the person got a photo or a video of his private parts, they started demanding money. And they demand money in the form of gift cards, Venmo, PayPal, Apple Pay, like whatever the kid can get his hands on, they are demanding that the child send money. And so you can see where the person who is on a burner phone, so it's a burner phone number. So if you go to find the phone number, it does not exist. What paying app you got, 987654. What he's threatening is, I'm going to send your genitalia to your entire school. I'm going to send it to all of your followers on Instagram, and I'm going to start posting as though I'm you with pictures of your genitalia. And so, unfortunately, we have had boys around the country, several of them die by suicide, because in the midst of this kind of interaction, they are so panicked and ashamed and so afraid to tell their parents that they just completely panic and freak out. And so I do a lot of talking to moms and dads, particularly of boys 11 to 18. It's not that it can't happen to a girl, but the Phoenix FBI actually came out with a bulletin a couple of months ago and said, like, it is 4 times as many boys as we're seeing with girls. And so it's not fun to talk about, but I think it's important that people know about it. And then lastly, we've seen a national movement called Away for the Day, which I'm really excited about. And we also passed a legislative bill this session that is called a cell phone ban. I like calling it Away for the Day because kids need access to phones before and after school for activities and orthodontic appointments and getting a hold of you. And so I do think it's important that kids put phones away. I've never seen a phone be a great thing during the school day. I see them contributing to our vaping issue, our drug issue, conflicts, bullying with each other, trading nude photos on campus. I have never really been a fan of having phones on campus in the classroom. I've seen, oh, sorry, sorry. Sorry, the dog's going crazy. Bruno, come here. Come here. Sorry. Sorry. Oh,
You're good. No problem. We understand.
sorry. Dog's going crazy. Sorry. So one of the things that I've seen schools doing is doing like Away for the Day, but then allowing it during passing period, which defeats the purpose of putting them away. I've also seen them allowing them at lunch, which is where we want kids interfacing with each other so they can learn how to be a real human. So I'm a big fan. I don't like the word ban. I think kids turn off when we use the word ban, but I am a fan of Away for the Day. So I'll open for questions. That was a lot. I'm going to send these slides to Christina so you can refer back to them and share them with whomever. Any questions? I said a lot in a relatively short amount of time.
Questions. It's a small group, so feel free to shout out, raise your hand, or stick it in chat. Katey, will you share a little bit about apps like the Bark app and what they do and how they can be helpful?
Yes. So this is an example of the Bark app. So there are a ton of apps out there that do the same thing for the most part, but I would say Bark is probably the most comprehensive in that it allows you to see what the other kid said. So if student A, in this example is Sophia, says something rude and then your kid says something back, you will get an alert to your phone and a snippet of the conversation between the two kids. So imagine that you have two kids talking about meet me in bathroom B and I have the vapes, right? So that would alert to a parent phone. So the parent downloads the Bark app and syncs it with their phone, and then they receive the alerts. It also allows you to lock down screen time, block websites, do location check-in. With sexting, which is so rampant, the average age of kids trading nude photos is 11. So if a parent has Bark and a child tries to send a nude image or is receiving a nude image, the image will be stopped and the parent will get an alert that an inappropriate image was either sent or received by your student. The image never is available to the parent. It is locked in a Google Vault, but you get an alert that there was an image that was showing too much skin, and so it's not being received by your student. So there are multiple apps out there: Go Guardian, Net Nanny, Our Pact, Yellow Canary. There are 4 or 5 of them out there that do the same thing. Another thing, as I mentioned, Bark has a new Bark phone and a new Bark watch. So if you just want calling and texting, and then as your child ages, you want to be able to add social media apps to the phone grows with your child. So I often get a lot of questions around, when should I give my kid a phone? I think I've outlined for you all the yuck out there. So the answer is never. But what I love about these baby dumb phones now is it's a good bridge. Like you can call and text, training wheels, building incremental trust. We're doing this together. And then when they're 14 through 18, okay, fine, we can upgrade you to like a real Android. I love my iPhone, but iPhones are not safe. They are not safe. Their parental controls are not great. Kids work around them very, very quickly and often, just like we would if we were children. So those are some of the options out there in the world. And I really, I'm not like a super great salesperson in the sense of I don't care if you use Spark or not, but you have to use something. There's just so much going on out there that you have to have a tool that is giving you behavioral insight into what is going on with your child. So those are just some of the things out there.
Thank you, Katey. Questions?
And I'll go back to Christina, one of the things that you and I came together on this year, just a few weeks ago. We unfortunately have adults in the world that are in positions like teaching, coaching, youth pastor, camp counselor, aunts, uncles, right? So I was at this school safety conference, and one of the women that was speaking, her keynote was called Grooming 101, A Predator's Playbook. And she started rattling off statistics. And the current statistic is 1 in 10 children in K through 12 settings will be sexually abused by someone at the school that they have a relationship with, that they know. Some other stats she rattled off. Let me see if I can get the math right. So 34% of the people who are sexually abusing our children are family members, and 59% are educators or people that work in school settings or church settings. So that is 93% of the people who are harming our kids. The other 7% are the strangers, which includes our online predators, right? And so I tell parents, you have to think like a creeper. Like if you were a creeper, where would you find little kids? You would find them on Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite and Call of Duty and TikTok and all the things, right? So when people ask me like, what is the safest app? I can't answer that with fidelity because every app that has a chat feature, which includes Pinterest, allows people to chat with your children. And that's why you have to have monitoring and supervision and parental controls and all the things.
That's really helpful. Katie, I was gonna, if others have questions, please chime in, but I'm gonna ask another one while I'm here.
Oh,
Katie,
yeah.
there was a few slides back, you mentioned, I think it was Keystone School, that had a nice little pie chart, a half pie chart around the impact of phones with kids. And I think it's like, yep, there you go. I noticed they mentioned over 2 hours of cell phone use per day decreases happiness. And we know that, the phones, social media has increased isolation, has definitely increased anxiety and depression amongst our youth. Is 2 hours about the appropriate time, or what are experts saying? If we're going to allow our kids to have phones outside of the bedrooms, how much time do we allow them to have?
So the current expert recommendation, so for age 0 to 5, it's no more than 30 minutes. And they really are actually saying now, like, the only thing they want kids doing between those ages is FaceTime. They don't even really want them on like ABC Mouse and educational games. Um, Probably unrealistic, but that is the expectation right now. Other recommendations for ages 5 to 18, they're saying no more than 1 hour per day. And at the upper grade levels, they're saying obviously for school. But they're talking about like going back to, I'll go back to my little brain thing, digital vegetables and digital candies. So if you look at this brain scan here, and this is from the book Glow Kids, GLOW Kids. It's by a professor out of NYU named Dr. Nicholas Katsaris. You'll see on the brain scan on the top, there's like really good blood flow. So this would be a kid using his Chromebook for a class project. So he's engaged in something that's moving his life forward. It's good content for his brain. The bottom brain scan is where we start to worry about kids. It's over that 2 hour mark. So I would say, and Dr. Jean Twenge out of San Diego State, she wrote the book iGen, IGEN. Her research is all about that 2 hour mark, like no more than 2 hours per day of quote digital candy, which I would say most of us as adults are getting way more than that too. So it's not a kid issue only. But one thing that I really encourage people to think about is technology is a privilege, not a right. And so a lot of parents have handed over these devices and hope for the best, and then they get frustrated. Their kid hits their brother, give me your device. Not doing well in school, give me your device. So there are a few pillars of wellness that I've come up with, 5 of them to be exact. Things like grades, hygiene, behavior in school, behavior at home, sleep. If any of those things are tanking, you don't get the privilege of using your device. You have to be pulling your weight in life. I get so many phone calls from like parents of 15-year-old boys, and they're like, he won't come out of his room. All he wants to do is video game. He's failing all of his classes, right? We have to be parents. Like, if you are failing at life, if you are failing school, if you are not sleeping well, if you're being a jerk to your mom, guess what? You don't get to play your video game, right? Which means we actually have to parent. So a lot of people have given this stuff, and it's, the train has left the station. It's never too late to make some modifications. And if you have a 14 through 18-year-olds, I would not, I got this question the other night in New York City, and it's so cute. The mom's like, I gave my kid Snapchat when he was 14 and he's going to be 18 soon. Do I go take it away from him? Because now I heard all this bad stuff. No, taking it away from an almost 18-year-old is not going to work. He's just going to go around you and download it. So you have to get Snapchat, and you have to know it backwards and forwards, and you have to understand why he likes it, and you have to snap him and do it with him. Now, people in the sweet spot, like you, Christina, who have younger kids, who have kids who still love them and like them and don't talk back and aren't sassy, you're in the sweet spot where you have a little bit more leverage, and your no actually means no, right? And so it's not to say that we can't modify with teenagers, But with teenagers that have had stuff for a while, I don't want parents spending their energy trying to like keep up with it and restrict it. I want them to do it together. Kids are our best teachers. If you want to know anything about an app, sit down with a 12-year-old. He or she will teach you everything you need to know. Trying to keep up with them, trying to see if they have burner accounts, trying to figure out, everything they've said on text messages. That is not where the relationship needs to bloom. We need open communication and building trust because 6th through 12th grade, as you know, is a ride. Kids are deciding, am I going to vape? Am I going to try pot? Am I going to try that pill? Am I going to have sex? Am I going to go to an unsupervised party? If these devices are in the middle of our relationships, it's not going to go well. And so getting these devices out of the middle of the relationship, sitting down, and with younger kids, I would definitely recommend sitting down and making a family screen time contract. And parents need to come up with, okay, here are the 4 non-negotiables. Like, we don't give out private information. You don't send any photos of your body whatsoever. If somebody sends something to you, you come to us. Like, whatever your non-negotiables are, those need to be the first 4 in the contract. And then the kids should have a voice in the use of their devices. Like, what do you think is fair? And implement some of them, knowing that with the entire contract, kids are going to push limits. They're going to break those rules. We want them to. You want them to make the mistakes under your roof and the roof of the school so that we can guide and help them when the stakes are really low. Over 18, I can't help you, kid, right? Under 18, we're going to do this together. If you make a mistake, I'm going to be right here with you. So I think, I would say the hardest ages to parent through with devices is like 10 through 15 is really hard. Once they start driving and having boyfriends and athletics and girlfriends and all the things, they tend to not be so stuck to them. But 10 through 15 is really difficult. If you can build some incremental trust, if you have a family screen time contract, if you're putting devices up at night and not in the bedroom, things will go much better for you.
That's really helpful. Charlie turns 10 in 5 weeks, and we're putting a contract together tomorrow once he gets out of school. Katey, we have a question here in chat from Kelly. What are the laws in Arizona about youth sending nude photos to other youth? Are other states will charge minor children with possession and distribution of child pornography?
Yeah, so we have the same law. It used to be a juvenile felony, but because it's so rampant, the judges have knocked it down to a misdemeanor. But it is a crime and they can be arrested for it. Typical first offenders do community service and diversion. But we are seeing an uptick in deep fake nudes, meaning kids in high school and middle school are taking artificial images that look very, very, very much like the person they're making them of, and then attaching the head of that person to a naked body and circulating that around school and pretending it to be that person. And that is also a crime. So Trump actually signed the Take It Down Act yesterday, which was brought forward by his wife, and that allows victims of those crimes to prosecute. And also, there's a Take It Down website where you can report an image, and then the government and NCMEC will help find the image and take it down.
Great. Thanks, Katey.
But yeah,
Any other questions?
Yeah, I started seeing sexting, which wasn't even a word, in 2011 is when I first started seeing my students participate in that. And at the time, it was so outlandish that, our school police officers were arresting kids on campus who were 14, and they were getting juvenile felonies. It was really bad and really unfortunate for them. And again, no training. Like, parents are very hesitant to talk about naked bodies and pornography. On that front, if you're looking for a great resource for elementary age students and how to talk about pornography with them, there's an amazing book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. There's a K through 2 version and then a 3 through 6 version. We have to talk to kids about this. It is so rampant. I would say 7th and 8th grade boys and girls are probably the highest users of Pornhub.com right now.
All right. Thanks, Katey. Gosh, I
So
always
on
learn so
that
much
note,
from you, and then I leave.
Christina, you should go eat your feelings and get some ice cream.
Go ahead, Brisa.
Hey,
Yes.
oh, I had a quick comment.
Yeah.
So one of the things that has been really working, so I'm a wellness coach and
Yes.
I particularly work with kiddos, and we have included their phone as a wellness component. So we have
Yeah.
wellness contracts, and
Awesome.
we have their movement, we have their nutrition, we have phone wellness. And so having the contract around all the dimensions of wellness has
Yeah.
really supported in not making it, a negative conversation for my
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
but created an opportunity for them to one of the strategies that I can give you, for example, is around the phone wellness. They have, instead of reading on screen, which we know is kind of a small passive hit,
Yeah.
they have the alternative of reading a book, a couple pages, and so that promotes that phone wellness. And
Yeah.
so we have them kind of earning those wellness points throughout their, all
Yeah.
their 9 dimensions, really, but we've kind of included that phone as another wellness component.
That's so awesome. Can you send me that? I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you the worksheet that I created for the group that I have, because I have my group is from 8, and then I think my oldest kiddo is 14.
Okay.
And this particular reason why I work with them is they have type 1 diabetes. So we
Oh,
have like
yeah.
wellness
Yeah.
related, but the phone is something that we've included.
Yeah.
And it really has transformed the conversation for my parents,
That's so awesome.
because now it's something that they're getting another voice around. And we've
Yeah.
heard from the school also that it's made a little bit of a difference, because
Yeah.
most of the group is not as, focused on their phone anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah. I have a type 1 kid, so she has to have her phone all the time for her blood sugar. So
Mm-hmm.
I get that.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so we have complete access because of the apps that we use. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the other reasons why we have phone wellness, because if we're losing our battery over videos,
Right.
then we
Yeah.
don't have access to our sensors.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
definitely a crisis.
Yeah, I will share. So there are 2 contracts that I usually share. One is from Bark, and there's another one called healthyscreenhabits.com. So the parents in New York the other night are like, "Oh, please send examples." And I told, this one dad was very intense. I said, you can just Google family screen time contracts. There's like hundreds of them out there, but I will attach a couple contracts to the slides so you can look them over. But I love that angle for sure. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Brisa. Thanks, Katey. Anything
Yeah.
else?
Save the kid.
Save the kid. And Katey, I have recorded this. Thank you for allowing us
Yes,
to record
of
it, because there's
course.
definitely others that wanted to attend but weren't able to.
Oh, of course.
And I will, just thank you so much. I mean, we are so blessed for you to be flying
Oh.
all over the world on this topic, and you come and join us on a Wednesday night. We sure appreciate that, and we're really lucky to have you as a champion for our kids, and staying on the front lines of this and really ahead of the curve. Because I mean, as you mentioned, they're smart and they are figuring it out.
They,
Um,
they're
Kathy,
very
do you have any closing thoughts or comments?
Thank you so much, Katey. I really wish almost that I had not heard all this. Now it requires action. And
I
so,
know, right?
oh my goodness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, thanks again for all that you all do, and we're doing this together, and we'll just keep up the awareness and education.
Great. All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the night. And thank you again, Katey.
Thanks,
We sure
everyone.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.